Hello, Dale Cates here with SEADeaf Thailand. It's been a while. I think the last video we made was back in December. So it's September 30th, 2021. I want to make a quick little video. I hope I don't get too long-winded. Um, Real quick. So, update. Schools have been closed since July, so we have not been able to go to the schools for the deaf to work with the kids since July. And this is really bad because we've been having a lot of success and a lot of growth in our visits to the schools. And there are two other schools that we really want to develop relationships, Konkan, Mukdahan. Um, but schools are closed. COVID-19. Hopefully schools will be opening back up soon and we'll be able to resume weekly visits. Okay, now the problem with schools being closed, there's many problems because schools are closed. Kids aren't getting educated. But with the deaf children, here's what I want to get at. 2022 is coming up. We're getting ready to go into a new year. SEADeaf Thailand is goal for 2022 is to develop a family resource center for families and deaf people, families of deaf and deaf people. Why is that important? Okay, look, it's a common story. My mom and dad are both deaf. I've heard these stories my whole life, okay? And I know it's here too. I've talked to deaf people here too. So I know it's common around the world. Here's the thing. Depending on who you talk to, less than 25% or less than 20% of families that have deaf children, less than, let's just go with 20, less than 20% of those families actually know sign language. Less than 20%. That means 80% of kids who are deaf have no communication at home. My mom told me a story about when she was a little girl. Now, my grandmother was a wonderful lady, my mother's mother. She's a great lady. We were close. We really were. And I love my grandma. I miss my grandma. I'm thankful for my grandmother. But let me tell you a true story. My mom told me that when she was a little girl, her mother never learned to sign. And I'll tell you something in a minute. But what my mom got at home was pointing at stuff. And what are you talking about? My mom would say, what are y'all talking about? And the response was, a man, don't worry about it. See, they minimized the deaf. Why? Well, it's hard to learn sign language. It's hard to be deaf and be at home and nobody's talking to you. That's hard. Oh, it takes a lot of time and effort. Yeah. So is trying to figure out what's going on and you're not telling them anything. So one of the goals for this upcoming calendar year, 2021, is that we want to develop resources, whether it's written resources, video resources, for families of the deaf and community members that live around them, extended families. A lot of these Thai families, they live in villages, and this extended family that lives in the village. So it's a cousin, uncle, aunt, grandmother, the families all around. So we want to start locating these villages where these deaf families, start with the schools, and develop relationships with the students as we have been doing, and the staff as we have been doing, and the directors as we have been doing, and begin to develop relationships with the families of the deaf students, and going into their villages and offering them resources. It's going to have to be free for them. Nothing's free. Everything costs money, but free for them. Bringing them resources and training them, teaching them sign language. Why? Why is sign language important? Why is communication important? And then giving them avenues where they can learn sign language, where they can learn to communicate with their kids when their kids are at home. COVID-19 has shut the schools down since July here in this part of Thailand, and pretty much the whole country. But so when these deaf kids are now at home for the past 4 months or something, you know what? They're not having any communication. They have a smartphone. They can talk to their friends. Yeah, but in their home with their families and the people in their villages, it ain't happening. Okay, there's no communication, and it's almost criminal because it should not be that way. And it doesn't have to be that way. So we want to develop a resource center and the resources for families of the deaf and communities where the deaf live when they're not at school, so that the deaf can have access to information, communication, better their relationships and everything else. Um, and then begin to educate people on early intervention and why language acquisition at an early age, as soon as it's discovered that child is deaf, whatever that age is, 6 months old, a day old, whatever. As soon as we know that child is deaf, start training with sign language. Start training with sign language so the child has access to information and communication, because the longer they're delayed on language acquisition and language development, the longer that's delayed, everything else is delayed. Emotional development, mental development, intellectual development, everything is delayed. And then, it's hard to catch up. When you arrive at school, you don't have any language, you're 5 years old, you're 6 years old, you go to a school, and all of a sudden you got language. That's a good thing. But you're 6 years behind, you're 5 years behind, you're 4 years behind. It's really hard to come back from that. So we really need to start developing a resource center for that. We'll need a deaf, we'll need a Thai/English translator to go with me into these villages and these places where we can begin to train. My Thai is not that good. I need to get better at it, but I'm not that good at this point. So, I need a partner, somebody that can go with me. Why is language so important? Well, I've already mentioned the development. Let me tell you a true story. I was there when it happened. I was in my mom and dad's home in Manio, North Carolina, USA. I don't know how old I was. I was in my 20s, 19, 20, 21. And my grandmother was there. And I remember my grandmother, she died when she was like 3 days from 81, so 80 years old. But at that point, she was 77, 78 years of age, and she was not in good shape. But I remember her walking into the living room, and my mom was there, I was there, and I remember my grandmother started blah, 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 talking to my mom. My mom's deaf. She started talking with her voice. Blah, 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 blah. And my mom, I guess, had just had enough. At that point, my mom's 50-something years, maybe about the same age I am now, 54, 55, something like that. And so my mom, I remember. My mom looked at my grandmother, and she said, "You never learned to talk to me. You never learned sign language. I am deaf. I don't know what you're talking about. I cannot read your lips that good. I cannot hear you. I don't know what you're talking about. You never took the time, outside of some basic hand signals, you never took the time to learn how to talk to me." And my grandmother started crying. I started crying. My mom was crying. My grandmother was really upset after that. But you know what? I think it needed to be said. And it's sad that it happened. And I love my grandmother. I'm not knocking my grandma, okay? I love my grandma and me were close. But this scenario repeats itself every day around the world with hearing family members and the deaf. It doesn't have to be that way. So that's what we're going to build with the Resource Center. Okay? We want to start to minimize that as much as we can. We probably won't eliminate it, but as much as we can reduce it and start to make inroads in that area, we will. And so we're going to need to do that within the next calendar year. That's going to take printed material, that's going to take video material, probably YouTube channel. We have a YouTube channel, but produced videos in Thai Sign Language and spoken Thai. So, that requires some funding and some financial resources to do that, time. So far, SEADeaf Thailand has operated completely on volunteers and donations, and we appreciate that. Listen, I want to hit this real quick, and I'm going to close, but we'll never I'm never going to come to you and say, "We need money, please give us money, please." I'm not going to do that, okay? I'm not going to do that, because SEADeaf Thailand was established because of a vision. I had a vision, not see something, but a vision of something that could be. And so, where there's vision, when it's a real vision given to someone to do something important or great, with vision is provision. All my needs are supplied. Okay, all our needs, SEADeaf Thailand, our needs will be met. There's no question about that. Our needs will be met. Who, what, when, where? Okay, I don't know, but our needs have been met so far, so we're grateful for that. But we got a big vision, starting with the resource center and developing. Eventually, we want to develop a vocational and technical training center for the deaf. There's nothing like it in Asia, and we want to develop the first one here. Not to be the first, but because it's needed. We need to be able to take these deaf people, bring them in, give them skills for life, where they can be productive. And let me tell you something. There's a deaf lady in Pontong. She's not from Pontong. She's from Callison, but she works in Pontong. She's a beggar. Okay, and I first met this lady, and I realized she has no language. None. That's it. Okay, no language. She's 62, 63 years old. Sweet lady. But she makes her money from begging and selling. She blows up balloons and sells them to kids. She sells balloons, or she sits in front of 7-Eleven with a bucket and just kind of sits there. People walk by and they can see that, this poor old lady, and they'll drop some money in a bucket. And on an average day, she makes about 300, 400 baht. In the U.S. dollars, that's give or take $10. Okay, and I saw her recently. She had broken her arm, and I stopped, and we kind of just we make it work. We try to figure out how. It's really basic gesturing, but this is what we got. And I always try to talk to her when I see her. And she had broken her arm, and so she kind of gestured how she had fallen down and broken her arm. And then she told me she was going to sleep. She sleeps when she comes to Pontong. She's from Callison, but she makes money in Pontong. Callison people don't. It's not. She doesn't even make 300 baht in a day in Callison begging. She comes to Pontong. But when she's in Pontong, she sleeps on the sidewalk in front of 7-Eleven. It's a 60-some-odd-year-old lady. She never went to school. She never got language. She begs for a living, and she sleeps on the sidewalk. You got that? Let me tell you something. She never got language. And I inquired about to some people that know her. I said, why did she go to school? Her parents didn't feel it was necessary. Her parents didn't think it would help her. See, there's a lot of people that think that because people are deaf, they can't do anything. And that's a lie. That's not true. That's absolutely not true. Of course, there are some people that have other situations, or that deafness is not the only situation in their life. They may have other situations. There are other people out there walking the streets, your neighbor maybe, somebody you work with that has some situations, okay? But generally speaking, there's nothing wrong with deaf people. They just can't hear. Their mind is fine. But they didn't get the language at an early age for whatever reason. Parents didn't send them to school for whatever reason. They didn't get an education. And they end up like sweet Hoke. Hoke is the lady's name. And they end up begging on the street, sleeping on the sidewalk. And it's totally, totally, totally avoidable. It's totally avoidable. Didn't have to be like that. But because her parents didn't send her to school. And that, I'm in Thailand, and so it's a Buddhist country. People are wonderful. I love my Thai friends, okay? I love my Thai Buddhists. I love people. I got friends that are, most of my friends here are Thai Buddhists, okay? So I'm not knocking that. But what I'm going to tell you is there's an ingrained belief, which comes from Buddhism, is something, if you say it in the Pali language, it's kama. If you say it, if you go with the Sanskrit, it's karma. And Thai people call it kam. But it basically says that whatever is happening physically, if somebody has some ailments or whatever in this life, look, I believe you get one life, okay? You get one, that's it. But in the Buddhist belief, there's multiple lives, there's reincarnation. And if something, bad karma will show up. Could be deafness, could be blindness, could be something. And so the ingrained belief is that, well, you know, this woman is deaf, this child is deaf, this man is deaf, this boy or this girl, they're deaf. It's probably karma, calm. It's not, but that's the belief. So there's a lot to overcome here, and it's just based on education, and that's what the Family Resource Center is intended to do. But this is deep. Okay, this is not something that should, here, learn some sign language. No, this is deep, okay? And this is going to take a lot of work and a lot of effort, but we're going to do it. So, real quick, like I said, we'll never beg for money, never ask for money. Everything we've been doing so far has been totally volunteer, and we've had a few donations. People have helped us out along the way. Much appreciated. All that's appreciated, and continued support. Up to you if you want to give or not give, or in any way that you want to do so. But thank you if you've donated, if you've given your time or your money or materials. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. We will be setting up a Patreon account. I'll tell you real quick. We're going to set up a Patreon account. We'll announce whatever our needs are. We'll put out there a rough budget if we know it's a need. It's roughly the budget for this need, and then, if you feel, once we have the Patreon account, we're never going to say, hey, we need money, give us money, never. But it'll be a running, whatever, and if somebody feels led to donate, to help out, there'll be an avenue where they're able to be a partner in that sense. So that's coming. That's going to be, hopefully that's going to be up and running within the next week or two. But resources cost money. Resource center costs money. It's going to be printed material, video material. I'm going to need, and I can't do that alone. I'm going to need to have some people help me do that, which that's going to involve some cost. When I'm going to these villages, once we start working in this resource center, it's going to be mobile. We're going to be going to the people. Okay, it's not going to be, you have to come down. We're going to you. Okay, but so it's a mobile resource center. That costs money and time. It costs gas money to drive there. If I'm bringing somebody to translate for me, or somebody that can English and Thai, that's going to, all these things cost money. So just know that's where we're headed. But like I said, where there's vision, there's provision. So we know we're doing the right thing. We know why we're doing it. We know that our needs are always met. And so, just real quick, I'm 17, 18 minutes here. Just kind of want to get that out there. But thank you for listening. Thank you for your encouragement. Thank you for your support. And just know we're pushing forward, man. We're in this for the long haul. Got a 200-year vision here. Okay? All right. Thank you. Bye.